Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into mastering essential business vocabulary from Chapter 1. Now, to make absolutely sure these terms stick in your memory, we're taking a very deliberate approach today. For every single term, I'm going to say it nice and slow, exactly 3 times in a row. After that, I'll give you a crystal clear English explanation so you know exactly what it means in the real world. So get comfortable, focus in, and let's start building that professional vocabulary.
Here is our roadmap for today. We have 4 main topics to tackle. 1. Organizational structures. 2. Pricing and records. 3. IFRS and future operations. And 4. Professional judgment.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Organizational Structures.
Our very first term is hierarchy. 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 So, what is a hierarchy? Well, it's a ranked system of organization. As our source perfectly puts it, a business structure is a hierarchy, not a pile. It's designed specifically so that work flows from the top down. That keeps things from turning into total chaos, ensuring everybody knows exactly what their distinct role is. Okay, but businesses usually need more than just a base. That brings us to overlays. Overlays, overlays, overlays. Overlays are just additional structural layers or sets of information placed right on top of your existing frameworks. If the hierarchy is the basic shape of the company, overlays add that extra complexity on top. Think of things like cross-functional teams or temporary projects that sit over the main structure. Moving right along to Section 2, Pricing and Records. We've got 2 closely connected terms here. First up, provisional price. Provisional price, provisional price. A provisional price is basically a temporary estimate you use in contracts or records before you know the exact final costs. And that leads directly into our second term, actual to provisional price variance ratio. Actual to provisional price variance ratio. Actual to provisional price variance ratio. This ratio simply measures the difference, or the variance, between that temporary provisional estimate you started with and the actual cost you ended up paying. Next, let's talk about how businesses track their expenses. First, subsidiary records. Subsidiary records. Subsidiary records. These are the detailed underlying ledgers that break down the big summary numbers in your main accounting books. Look, if your main book says you owe 10 grand, the subsidiary records tell you exactly who you owe it to. Next up, insurance premium. Insurance premium. Insurance premium. This one's straightforward. It's the recurring fee a business pays to secure and maintain their insurance coverage. All right, so let's dive into Section 3, IFRS and future operations. Let's map out a really clear progression here. First step, IFRS roadmap. IFRS roadmap. IFRS roadmap. This is the broad, general plan laying out an intention to adopt international standards. The next step gets a bit more specific. IFRS convergence roadmap. IFRS convergence roadmap. IFRS convergence roadmap. This is a meticulous plan to gradually bridge the gap and align local rules with IFRS standards over time. And the final destination, full IFRS adoption. Full IFRS adoption. Full IFRS adoption. This means you have completely implemented the international standards with absolutely no localized exceptions. Now for operational timelines. We have a crucial contrast here that you really need to understand. First, cease operations, cease operations, cease operations. To cease operations means to entirely and permanently terminate a business activity. It is the absolute end. Compare that with this phrase, curtail the scale, curtail the scale, curtail the scale. To curtail the scale means you are merely reducing the size or scope of the business, but you aren't shutting it down completely. That is a super important distinction when you're reading financial reports. So how do businesses look ahead? First, foreseeable future, foreseeable future, foreseeable future. This refers to the predictable time ahead that management can realistically plan for when making financial assessments. Simple as that. Next, departure, departure, departure. In accounting, a departure is the formal act of not complying with a set rule or standard. If you make a departure from the rules, you better have a really thorough explanation. Which brings us to our last stop, Section 4, professional judgment. Our first term here is an absolute lifesaver for risk management. Provisions. 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 Provisions are funds set aside in advance to cover anticipated future liabilities. Basically, it's money responsibly reserved today for a financial hit you expect to take tomorrow.
Let's keep this momentum going with how choices are made. First, arbitrary. Arbitrary, arbitrary. An arbitrary decision is a random choice made without logic, system, or reason. In business, that's exactly what you want to avoid. But what happens when things change? That's switching, switching, switching. Switching simply refers to changing from one accounting method to another. And if you do switch, you absolutely need justification, justification, justification. This is the solid, documented reasoning you need to explain exactly why you made those professional choices.
For our final two terms, let's look at how they work in the real world. First, facing ambiguous, facing ambiguous, facing ambiguous. This describes being confronted with unclear or borderline situations where the rules just aren't perfectly black and white. And how do you handle that gray area? With professional judgment. Professional judgment. Professional judgment. When things are ambiguous, you can't just flip open a rulebook. You have to rely heavily on your expert professional judgment to make the fairest, most defensible choice possible.
And honestly, that perfectly captures the reality of business accounting. So I want to leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. When you are facing ambiguous situations in your own career, will your professional judgment rely on random, arbitrary choices, or will it be built on solid, clear justification? Take the time to truly master the vocabulary we covered today, and you'll be empowered to make and confidently defend much better professional decisions. Thanks for joining us on this learning journey, and I'll see you next time.